Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Phil Mackintosh, Chief Economist at Nasdaq, for an update on the latest COVID-19 news. And as U.S. and global economies look to reopen back to business, Phil, great to have you with me as always. And despite a negative GDP number, a slump in pending home sales, Gilead's positive data on its drugs is really drowning out all the negativity in today's session.
Yeah, and I guess it's consistent with what we've been seeing the last few weeks, isn't it? Where the markets have already priced in all the bad GDP data and all the bad retail spending data, and now we're looking forward to see what's coming. And you're right, there was some decent news on vaccines, although a lot of people are still talking down how quickly they'll be available. And there was also some, the GDP number was pretty bad, but there was some bright spots in it. So I think that's kind of got people a little bit more positive. And just seeing that people are getting back to work. There was a little bit of a surprise in the German data. I think it was reported that there was a spike in cases as Germany goes back to work, which is a worry. But so far, a lot of the economies seem to be starting to get back into work, and there's already been an uptick in spending reported as well.
Let's take a look at a couple of charts here, because I think there's that misconception that's still around there that it's just like the flu, it's just like the cold. But if you take a look at the data, it seems to be that this particular virus is very different than either one of those.
Yeah, and I guess we've been aware of that, but it's still such a new virus. There's not a lot of really hard data coming out. So there's a couple of charts that have been going around lately just showing how many more deaths there are in the US from COVID than there are from the classic flu. And remember, that's after we did do the shutdown and we flattened the curve. Looking at the number of infected people, a few million globally, there's obviously a lot of people that have not been exposed to COVID. And so the death rates being above the flu prove that this is a much more deadly flu, or much more deadly virus than the flu. The question remains how many people are positive and don't know it because they've been relatively asymptomatic. But regardless, if you look at there's a really interesting chart that we found today, looking at the number of deaths per day, and COVID for a period of time was causing more deaths than heart attacks or cancer. So the rate of death that comes from this is not something to be sort of sniffed away. It's real, and it's obviously caused a lot of trauma in hospitals, and we've seen the news reports of that, but the data sort of supports that it's not fake news, it's real news, and it is affecting a lot of families, and it's affecting a lot of medical staff as well.
Yeah, and I think what it comes down to, it really is the risk of multiple waves, and we can see that in the next chart here. If we look at the Spanish flu as a guide, and that goes back to what you were saying before about a deliberate, gradual return to work and learning from other economies that might be a couple of weeks ahead of us.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, we're talking about vaccines, and a vaccine would be great because theoretically, if it can be produced in the billions, which is one of the problems, we could get everybody vaccinated and we won't have anything to worry about. But in the meantime, you can see from the experience in 1918 with the Spanish flu, we got the first wave under control only to see it recur again and actually again. And so it went on and on for months at a time. For a period of around about a year. People are talking about that potentially happening here. The markets seem to be pretty bullishly pricing in getting back to work and hopefully being over this. The risk is, as we start to get back to work, we do things with less care than we should. We start to reignite the spread. And it seems at the moment like the only way to stop the exponential growth of new cases is to lock people back down. Unless we can get really solid testing in place to know who's positive quickly and isolate them and not everybody, we're probably going to have lockdowns by region. And it's been reported that that's how China is still dealing with this, is when there's a little bit of a reignition of cases, they lock down whole regions again and shut down restaurants and shut down movie theaters. So it's just a reality check. The markets are pretty positive, and that's great. The news on vaccines is promising, and that's great. But we've just got to keep reality in check and make sure that we don't all go back outside and socialize too quickly, at least without precautions.
All right, Phil, thank you so much for joining us as always.
You're welcome, Jill.
All right, and thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.